Okay, Mayor Anderson, you're live on Facebook.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to Coffee with the Mayor, a rather unusual Coffee with the Mayor because it really is an opportunity for you as people who are concerned about the coronavirus and the effect of different health requirements on businesses as well as our residents. You have a great chance to ask questions and to find out your answers to specific issues that you may be concerned about. I'm going to let our city manager, Nirup Srivatsa, introduce our panel, and then I'll say a few words, and then folks will be able to give you a quick presentation on the issues that we're facing and what it means for you as a resident or a business owner in Lafayette. So Nirup.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all staying healthy and safe. It's my pleasure to introduce this panel to you and also to let you know we're here to answer your questions, but in case we don't have an answer right away, I'll be taking notes. I'll make sure that we do get an answer for you. If you need us to contact you, please post your email on the chat line or send it to me at nsrivatsa@lovelafayette.org, and I will get back to you. So today we have Mayor Mike Anderson. We have Gail Israel, who is Supervisor Candace Anderson's Chief of Staff, Chamber Executive Director Jay Lifson, Fire Marshal Chris Bachman with Consolidated Fire, and Lafayette's Police Chief Ben Aldred. And running the show is Jeff Heyman, the city's communications officer. So Mayor Mike, can you introduce the topic?
I'd be happy to, Nirup. Thank you very much. And that, of course, is Nirup Srivatsa, our city manager, doing a great job under some very trying times here in Lafayette. I think what we really have on tap for you today is an opportunity, as I said, to ask questions and get information about what needs to be done to help us fight off this coronavirus epidemic and pandemic. There are viruses of all types that we've dealt with, but this one seems to me to be particularly virulent and is going to take some extra effort on everyone's part. It also does mean there's some sacrifice. And I think we have been hearing that from businesses, and our hope is in this session, we can clarify any issues for business owners and operators about what can or cannot be done under both the curfew from the state level and the purple tier rating that we have in Contra Costa County. So my hope is that you find this useful, you ask a lot of questions. If in fact you come up with something later, do not wait and get that email to me or Nirup Srivatsa at the city so we can get back to you and answer your questions. Thank you for participating in this, and I hope you will find it educational and hopefully a little inspirational. Thank you. Gail, I think you're next. Or am I missing that?
Oh, well, good morning. I'm here to answer questions from the county that the chief can't answer or the mayor. So I'm happy to be here to join you, and back to Nirup to introduce the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Lafayette Police Chief Ben Aldred. He's going to talk about the current rules, what it can or cannot remain open in the purple tier, and local enforcement. As you know, the responsibility of enforcing the health order rests with the local police department and code enforcement departments, should there be one. And it's our police department that enforces the health order for Lafayette. And so Chief Ben is going to be talking about local policies regarding enforcement and what can and cannot remain open at this time.
Well, good morning. Thank you for Mayor Anderson for hosting this today. When it comes to enforcement, there are a lot of questions, and to date, both myself and the city manager have worked with our Lafayette Chamber president as we get specific questions to a business to find those answers for that business, understanding sometimes in reading the order, certain things may seem gray. We always want to be thoughtful and make sure we get the right answer before we tell someone you need to close your doors or you can't do this or that. And so that's something we'll continue to do as we go into this purple tier and deal with the new restrictions and what enforcement looks like. I'm going to share my screen and start off with a few documents here. Give me 1 second here, Jay. Okay. So I'll first start with Jeff, is that showing? Yeah. Okay. There's been questions on what is our legal authority to.
It is a little bit small though, Chief Aldrich.
Okay, I'll try to make it bigger here.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. A little bit more even. Okay, and then you might have to scroll down. Okay.
What is our authority? And that is through the Board of Supervisors for Contra Costa County Ordinance number 2020-21 that allows us to enforce these restrictions. That health order is available on the county's website, and specifically on page 4 talks about what fines look like, what are the costs of fines. For example, for a business, if you're operating in violation, the fine will be $250 for the first violation, $500 for the second violation, and $1,000 for each additional violation within 1 year of the initial violation. So there are definitely fines attached to it. If someone continues to operate out of compliance, we do have the ability to submit that case to the district attorney's office for review of potentially a misdemeanor violation. So I started off with the harsh part, but let's just get to what is in the purple tier, specifically the blueprint for a safer economy. If you're on this call and you have questions, I really encourage you to go to the County Health Department's website. They have a lot of useful links there, such as this one, social distancing order, talking about modifications that took place as of Tuesday, November 17th. Talks about social gatherings, the fact that dine-in restaurants may operate outdoors only or for takeout, that indoor retail has to limit to 25% capacity, grocery stores can operate at 50% capacity, shopping malls at 25%, places of worship and cultural ceremonies may operate outdoors only, gyms and fitness centers may operate outdoors only, one-to-one personal training is allowed following the limited excuse me, that just cut off there. I don't know the other answer to that. Let me see. Indoor movie theaters must close. It talks about schools here and higher education. So again, this is available on the Contra Costa website. After this meeting, I'll make sure with Jeff Heyman, our PIO, that we provide direct links to some of these documents I'm showing to you. This is another useful one that's available on the county's health department's website. Talking about openings at a glance. It's something that you can go through quickly. It has a check if it's a yes, X if it needs to be closed. And so, again, another useful document that is available on the county health's website. When we talk about enforcement, our first model throughout this year has been education first. I'm very empathetic to the conditions that this has created for our businesses here in Lafayette. Throughout this year, I've worked with the city manager and our fire marshal, Chris Bachman, who will be speaking next, trying to find creative ways that a business can stay operational, whether it's outside, tents, heaters, etc. We will continue to do that. If you have a question about whether your business can be open, feel free to reach out to Jay, myself, or the city manager. If we do not have the answer, we will find the answer for you. Again, education is that first step. If it is clear that a business is operating out of compliance, we do have to move forward in enforcement. When education hasn't worked, the first step would be a notice of violation. This is what that looks like. A notice of violation is essentially a written warning that we document, we author a police report, and attach this notice of violation to that. The next step, i.e. the following day, if you continue to operate out of compliance, we're going to move to the notice of fine. And that is where Again, for a business specifically, the first fine is $250, the second day is $500, the third day is $1,000. And if a business continues to operate each day after that, it would stay at $1,000 a day. For us, if we had a business that was operating multiple days in violation, that is an example where we would contact the district attorney's office for further review of what the violations are and the appropriate actions that need to be taken to try to receive compliance. I'll stop sharing here for a minute. Again, I want to emphasize there is a definite process if someone is violating that we have to move through. Again, it goes from that written warning to the issuance of a fine to potentially higher increased fines over multiple days. Before we get to that, we'll again start with that education model, and that'll be done in partnership with Jay, in partnership with Narup, in partnership with our health department, before I'm showing up at your business giving you a fine. Again, if we don't receive the compliance after we get clear instructions from the health department, and especially if it's something that we think is gray, once we get those clear direction and I provide that information to you, we do need you to comply with it as you move forward. I'd like to introduce our Fire Marshal, Chris Bachman, before we move into the Q&A stage. Chris, we're specifically talking about what they offer at the fire department when you're looking to operate outdoors, tents, heaters, and some of the things that you need to consider. I know Chris has already come out on multiple occasions and met with business owners and worked with Jay to find creative ways for businesses to safely operate outside. Chris, thanks for being here today.
Sure, thank you. Good morning. As Chief Aldrich mentioned, we're definitely willing to work with businesses and cities. We've done this on multiple fronts with different cities throughout our county, and have approved some temporary road closures, temporary blocking of parking spaces in front of buildings, as long as we still have access to the water supply and access to the building. And we've granted some exceptions in the fire code with how close we're allowing tents to be near buildings. So one of the big ones is, as most of you have worked with us in the past, and if you've gotten a permit at a special event, we require that tent to be a minimum of 20 feet from a building. Well, we are allowing exceptions to that 20 feet on a case-by-case basis, depending on where's your egress from the building, what's the construction type of the building, and is the building sprinkled. And we'll give those exceptions to that 20 feet if we feel it can still be met safely. I'm going to share a document, and I can pass this on to the city after this meeting. We just completed this document last week, and all the where is it at? Sorry, here. Let's see. So all the fire marshals met last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, and came up with a, I'm not finding it. Here it is. Came up with a, we'll say, language for tents during COVID-19. So we had already had interpreted language on how we were going to, what we were going to require a permit on, some of the exceptions we were going to allow. The one thing that had not been discussed at that point was providing heat underneath the tents. So to make sure we were all on the same page, all the fire marshals met through a Zoom meeting. We went over all these requirements and came up with a unified language that would be consistent throughout Contra Costa County. So this document goes through, what's the definition of a tent, and that being, tents over 700 square feet. Now, for clarification, what if you're using the 10 by 10 tents, but you're tying them all together? It's the cumulative area of that tent space. So if someone has, 7 10 by 10 tents, and they're all spaced close proximity of each other and don't have that separation or those fire breaks that's called out, then we view that as it's one tent. And that that must also mean that it's open on at least two sides. So if it's an enclosed tent where you have four sides, then the permitting amount drops down to 400 square feet. But the 700 square feet then is like, well, what's an open tent? So we're all in agreement that as long as two sides of the tent are open, 50% or more, that we feel that we could still classify that as an open tent structure, and we would allow heating to be underneath it. And as you look at the next page, this is where it goes into the heating section that says that if you're going to put a heating device under your tent, you need to submit it to us for review. And we're going to ask for the manufacturer instructions on, is that device approved to be, under outside? And is that device approved? What's the spacing it says that it needs to be from anything combustible? Through our research, we found that most of these heating devices identify 3 feet. So that's what we're requiring as the bare minimum, is the 3-foot separation. But if the manufacturer of the type of heating device that they're proposing says 6 feet, then they would have to maintain whatever the manufacturer is identifying. The heater must be placed flat on a level surface on the ground. And if it's electrical, we need to make sure it doesn't have any type of damaged cord, and we need to ensure the heater is suitable and properly secured to avoid any contact with staff or patrons. So just a couple items that we're going to want to double check if they're going to provide heating devices under tents. If you already have a permit with us, there's no additional charge or fee for this. They just need to notify us, because in their original application, it wouldn't have been identified that they were going to do heating. If businesses are looking at adding tents, then they just need to specify that when they do their application, that they're plan to put a heating device under it, and just provide us those manufacturer instructions on what type of heating device they're going to use, so we can approve that. The permit fee is, as identified in the fire code, is good for 180 days. So usually when we do these special events, we just issue it for a weekend or a week. We are going to allow that to go the full 180 days. And we've all agreed that if in 180 days we're still dealing with COVID and the need for tents are still up, that we're all going to renew for another 180 days at no charge. So it's a one-time fee that you're getting a tent application for. It's the same cost as if you were getting a special event package for your wine festival every year for a business to apply for a tent. But potentially it's going to be good for up to a year for that temporary permit license. And we hope that these list of guidelines and kind of clarification on how we're interpreting the code is unified, and it's clear for everyone to understand what the requirements are, and it will be consistent throughout the county. So even if you have a restaurant or a business in another jurisdiction within the county and it's not within our fire district, it should be these same guidelines. So I'll be sure and share this document with the city. It's also available. You can contact our department and we can get you a copy of this tent application and tent guidelines as well. And that's all I have for the tents, and I'd be happy to take any questions when we get to the end for clarification.
Thank you so much, Fire Marshal Bachman. That was really useful, and I think the businesses will appreciate a consistent set of guidelines that they could all follow. From the city's perspective, I just wanted to reiterate that the council has relaxed several regulations in the downtown. If, for example, you want to use your private parking for outdoor dining or outdoor retail sales, we would be willing to work with you to get that set up. Similarly, if you want to use on-street parking spaces for outdoor dining, please contact the city planning department and we'll help you through that process as well. If there are no more presentations or any additional add-ons, Jeff, can we open it up to Q&A?
Absolutely. So what we'll do is if people have questions, they can either submit them in writing in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, or if they do wish to speak to the panelists, they can go ahead and use the raise your hand function. And then we will take those. I don't see anyone joining by telephone, so it would be just the raise your hand function. And we do have several questions that have come in writing. So I'm gonna go ahead and get right to those. And the first one comes in from Sharon. It says, if raining outdoors, is it permissible for a family to meet with social distancing in a large double garage with both doors open and patio heaters near the entrance but outdoors? Anyone want to take that one?
So as far as is it permissible, I don't see an apparent issue with that. Guidelines have allowed for members of a household to meet and have a certain number there. So, and as far as heaters go, Fire Marshal, do you have any concern with that?
No, if the heaters are outdoors, there's no issue. If they are going to be in the garage, then they need to make sure they're looking at the recommendations. Most of these heaters are designed to be outdoors, although if under any type of roof or canopy, it will identify what the specified clearance that it needs to be to make sure it doesn't ignite any type of combustibles. And what we found typically is the minimum is 3 feet. And that's why manufacturer says it's 5 feet or 6 feet, then that's what you need to make sure you're adhering to.
Okay, we have another question on tents.
Hey,
And
Jeff, I think Gail had something to add on that last question.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, hi there. I'm just looking at the state's recommendations and mandatory requirements for all gatherings. And in the purple tier, it does say that all gatherings must be held outside. And I believe the state's interpretation in regards to tents, and perhaps Assistant Chief has different information I do. I'm trying to get confirmation from County Health right now. But what we had heard was that a tent could only have one side down. Some other counties are saying 2 sides. So we're trying to get confirmation on that. I believe that then would be the same for an outdoor gathering based on this document from the state. So we can try to get further confirmation. This is one of those gray areas I think that was mentioned before, but I do believe as per state order, in the purple tier, all gatherings have to be outdoors.
Yeah, and to make sure we're not confusing the 2 different requirements, when we're saying 50% open, the reason we're calling that out is for fresh air, for any type of fumes or CO that the heater may be producing. And that if the health order identifies that what they view as open air or an open structure as 3 sides, then, it's going to, you need to comply with both. We're just identifying the 2-side requirement that we're defining a open tent as no more than 2 sides of the tent enclosed, that will still consider that an open structure to allow heating underneath it. But it depends on what tier you're on and the health order to comply with whether it's outside or inside dining or gathering. So kind of 2 different requirements, but the 2 sides was just really going to identify whether you needed to get a permit for the tent and whether heating would be allowed under that tent or not for open air.
So we will get the answer to the question about what are the tent requirements or outdoor gathering requirements in the purple tier.
Right.
And
so I just got confirmation from the county health guidance, and it is 1 side. So for restaurants that are having tents, they can only have 1 side closed. Again, unless the assistant chief knows something different from county health, but I did just get that confirmation, unfortunately, for restaurants.
And is that just while they're in the purple tier, or is that no matter what tier they're in?
I believe that it's Contra Costa County from our health services widespread tier. So it is for purple. And this is as of November 17th. So that could change if and when we get moved to red.
Okay, I think that pretty much answered the next question we have, but I just want to acknowledge that Victor did ask exactly what we're talking about. So let's be really clear. Fire chief says Lafayette is allowing tent structures to two sides. Contra Costa Health sent their latest guideline as of November 17th that clearly states tent structures must be open on all sides, but that's not what I think I heard. So maybe just to be clear on that, what are we saying?
So I have it open right now and it says tents are allowed, but they can only be open on one side.
Okay. All right, very good. We have a question here from Meredith, and she says, I don't want to get local businesses in trouble, but we have been concerned when I have observed too many people inside. Who should we call to ask that someone speak to the businesses to help them comply?
So I'll take that one. Just real quick on the last one, Gail, on whatever you were looking at, can you send that link to myself or the city manager, and we'll share that between the chamber and the city's website, if you don't mind.
Yes, and I'm sorry to confuse people further, but now that I'm actually reading the document as opposed to what someone from health texted me, it says outdoor dining, takeout, and delivery are allowed. If an overhead cover, for example, sunshade, is used for outdoor dining, it must be fully open on all sides. For an outside patio area immediately adjacent to a building, the other three non-building sides must be fully open. So that's the distinguishing information there, that if it's adjacent to a building, so all sides must be, the other three non-building sides must be fully open. So I have this document and I can, I don't know if I'm allowed to put it in chat, but I will send it to all the city officials.
Okay. And Victor, just thank you for that, by the way.
Can I just, I think this is an important issue, and we will make sure that we clarify this with the help of Gail and Chris, and send it to Jay so he can publicize it, because things are so dynamic. They seem to be changing on a weekly basis, and we want to make sure we comply.
And we started off this conversation talking about gray today, didn't we? So,
Yeah.
but that goes back to where if we believe we have a violation, we start with that education, and part of that education is not only potentially educating the business, but educating ourselves, utilizing our health department, digging through the orders that may be more specific to business than we are up to speed on. And so that is why education will be that first step, so that we do it together as a partnership. We're not looking for the police department to be your antagonist here. Let's get to the right answer and then make sure we're safely complying. As far as potential violations, whether it's people inside a business or otherwise, you can contact the Lafayette Police Department. One of the easiest ways is our tip line at 94549tip@gmail.com. So it's our city zip code with the word tip, TIP@gmail.com. One of the easiest ways to do that, so we're not potentially calling in a dispatch and inundating our dispatchers with something that may not be at the priority level that they're dealing with currently. But you are also welcome to call the police department. You're also welcome to call our non-emergency police dispatch line. But I would encourage you to try to use the tip email first, just so we can track those a little bit better. So thank you.
Okay. We have a couple more questions. The next one comes from JB, who says, hello, everyone. Great leadership from our city leaders. Bravo. And JB's question is there any interest, or has there been a discussion on a unified community outreach program that informs the community on these regulations via social media, email, newsletter, newspaper, etc.? There seems to be a disconnect in the understanding due to a lack of access to the information.
So Jeff, do you want to talk about, one, our county PIO and the county health department have really create a pretty robust website. So I would encourage anyone who has specific questions, start there. I know, Jeff, on the city side, you can talk about what you've done, but you've done updates through our various communication venues. So Jeff, you want to talk about the different venues we have so that folks that we can get them directed to the right website or the right link that you put out there on a regular basis?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Well, we have a COVID page that has the latest information on it, and it also has, by far, the best information is from the county site, and the county's done a fantastic job keeping that up to date. It has figures, it has where to go get tests, it has the latest regulations, it has all of the different health orders that have come out. And whenever those health orders come out, we post them to social media, on Nextdoor as well, and to our webpage. So you can find those archived on our webpage, just pretty much right in the front where it says latest news. But I would really urge folks to just type in Contra Costa Health, and you will see the webpage come up right there. That really does have the latest information. The Chamber also has a number of resources on its webpage that talk about which businesses are open, and also does relay the latest in the health orders. So I think there's a fair amount of information out there, but it does change frequently, so you do have to sort of keep in touch and make sure that you're updated as things do change. But whenever we get a new health order from the county, we put that out to our webpage, to social media, and then also to our distribution list. And I'll give a little shout out. If you do want to get that information, go ahead and go to our webpage, which is lovelafayette.org, and sign up for our e-notifications. There's a big green button there to sign up. Do that. It's under Connect with Us. And then also make sure that you check general news. That's where we send out the latest health information to general news. Okay, anyone want to add anything, or we have a couple more questions that have come up?
I just wanted to add that the county website that Jeff was referring to is coronavirus.cchealth.org. And aside from all the information Jeff mentioned, there is a virtual assistant, a little chat bot, where you can type in a couple words of what you're looking for if it's hard to find, and the chat bot will help you find it and will give you that information. So it's pretty user-friendly.
All right, the next question comes from Laura, and she says, these regulations were developed when scientists knew less. At what point will the officials reevaluate these regulations and create ones that reflect what scientists know now? When will the elected officials take into account overall health of a community, including financial and emotional?
So this would be a great question for you. Had someone from the health department on the call, and we did attempt to do that, but they've been inundated, as you all can suspect, over the last week, staying busy, especially with the word of vaccines coming out and what that looks like for our county. This is a question that Gail, I know I'm not trying to push back too much, but a lot of this stuff does come out at the county level. And your local politicians and local law enforcement are doing our best to make sure we follow those guidelines that are coming out, whether it's the county level or the state level or the federal level. And so independently here in Lafayette, we don't have that ability to create our own. And so that'd be a question that you would push higher up the food chain, if you will. No disrespect to our mayor being on the call, but I think he would agree with that. So, Mayor.
Well, I certainly agree with that. And I think the county is using its latest information to create the requirements that we're talking about today. So I don't think that there's a lag. I think there's basically a lot of changes that happen. So it's important that you stay current with the latest information from the county health. And with that, I will toss it to Gail.
I'm very happy to answer what I know. So the County Board of Supervisors and their chiefs of staff have a weekly, sometimes it's bi-weekly. It started out at the beginning of the pandemic as daily, including the weekends, a briefing with our health officer, our health director, some other deputy health officers. Sometimes the sheriff is on, and other assorted experts. And we get the latest information from the county health director and county health officer, again, on a weekly basis, sometimes more often. And they are using, for the most part, guidelines from the state. There have been times throughout the pandemic where the county health officer got to make the decisions for our county. Right now, the governor did put the brakes on, and so we are taking the orders from the state with the caveat that certain times through this pandemic, and I expect it will continue after we're out of this current break, that our county health officer is part of the Bay Area Association of Bay Area Health Officers, a BAHO, and they are working in partnership to try to have a regional approach, since we are a very mobile society. And, you know, as many people understand, if one county closes some businesses and activities and another county doesn't, it's very easy. For instance, if you live in San Ramon, you could just go to Dublin, which is in Alameda County, and visit businesses or do activities there. So they are trying to take a regional approach. So when necessary, the health officers in the whole Bay Area, for the most part, are trying to act in unison with their orders. Right now, though, we are under the state's edict. So at this time, while we are in the most restrictive, the purple tier, we're going to have to follow all the state guidelines. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay. I just want to ask again if there's anyone who's actually the attendee of the webinar who has a question that they'd like to talk to the panelists live. They can do that by raising their hand. We don't have any more written questions. So if there is anyone in the webinar who would like to, I think something just came up, who would like to ask a question, that'd be great. Let's see what we have here. Okay, JB has a question and says, what is the plan for reopening? Is it based on the same criteria as the first round of reopening? Anyone want to tackle that one?
So I don't have an answer for it, but in regards to, again, that's a decision that's made by our county health department and or our state health officials in tandem. And so I don't know what their answer is going to be. I know if you go to our county health website, they do have a dashboard that gives you the updates of how many folks are in the hospital, what is the positivity rate within Contra Costa County. And if you go there, they also talk about the different tiers and what are the criteria to go down to another tier or go up a tier. And so, again, if you go to the dashboard, there is an opportunity for you to look at tier assignments, enter your county in, and talk about what they're looking for in each tier.
I would also say that I don't believe that there's actually at this point a plan for reopening per se. It's really a matter of reacting to the overall crisis as a day-by-day count of cases and hospitalizations and deaths occur. Right now, we're getting a lot of very severe regulations in place because we're having a surge. But as that begins to come under control and people follow the regulations, then hopefully we'll work our way up back through the tiers again and get into less and less restrictions on gatherings and things occurring indoors. So it's really just a matter of us achieving better numbers when it comes to case counts as well as actual deaths. And with that, we get a chance to have more gatherings and more normalcy. But I don't really think we have a plan per se, because until there's a vaccination or vaccine available, it's going to be hard to really not do something to curtail the spread of this virus. We're going to have to be under some kind of requirement to keep that from spreading on a regular basis until there's a vaccination. And that would be the time to really talk about opening things back up.
And specifically regarding the tiers, the previous rule prior to this break was 2 weeks. You had to meet the metrics for the next less restrictive tier for 2 weeks. We haven't been told what that's going to be right now. As far as if it's different than 2 weeks, We were told that the state health department will be looking every week and looking at each county's metrics. We believe as a county right now, the goal is to not whip back and forth and open and close. So trying to stay a little consistent and not move to the next tier until we clearly have a trend that has improved significantly before we would move. But we believe that it's 2 weeks. You have to meet the metrics for the next tier for 2 weeks before the state can move you to a less restrictive tier.
Okay, very good. Over on Facebook, Lafayette Recreation posted a message, and they want to remind folks that they are offering a free senior services seminar, free one-on-one Zoom support for seniors, which would be very helpful over this coming weekend. So if you're a senior and you want some help with Zoom, that you can find that at Lafayette Recreation. I'm going to ask, I see Ace is here in the webinar. If you could repost that in the Q&A, we'll make that available for everyone. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. All right, JB has another question here, and it is, has the city or county considered a program for small businesses to assist in the expenses required to maintain compliance?
Well, let me just talk about the city perspective. We had our lobbyists, Towns and Public Affairs, basically available to businesses in Lafayette to apply for CARES Act and the PPE funding that was coming from the federal government. And I think the city manager can kind of confirm this. I think we ended up getting about $1.3 million in dollars to local businesses to assist them under those programs. The city doesn't have the wherewithal to actually have a program of that scale ourselves. So our best thought was to help people get assistance from the Fed. And I think we had some good success with that. And I don't know if the county has programs or thoughts about programs. Maybe Gail, you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, and also, there was a follow-up question on exactly that topic. So Laura writes, aside from loans, is the county or city discussing any assistance for small businesses? The governor has refused to allow the minimum wage hike to pause in January. As a small business owner, it feels as though there is little compassion from the county specifically.
Unfortunately, at this time, the county does not have any programs that have been approved for that. There are listings available of the programs that are being offered by the state and the federal government. And I do have that, and I can share it with the city, and they could pass that out to the community.
Okay, that would be great. All right, we have a question from Matt, and Matt would like to know, does this affect the opening of the Lafayette schools after the holiday?
I certainly can't address that. I don't know the situation with the schools.
Yeah, I don't think we have that.
Matt, I would be happy to get an answer for you. If you can send me your email address, I'd be happy to get an answer from the superintendents.
And specific to that question, the social distancing order I had up earlier on the screen does talk to that to some extent. Schools can reopen for in-person instruction once their county has been in the substantial red tier. So again, we're still waiting to hear more back from the state and county level, but I know our two superintendents have been following this very closely, trying to see what this looks like for January reopening.
And the superintendents are having regular weekly or even sooner than that or more frequent meetings with all the superintendents for all the districts in the county are meeting with the county superintendent, Lynn Mackey. And so Narup can, I'm sure, get clarification from her, but the superintendents are all aware of what the rules are, but it would be nice to push that out to the public as well.
All right, at this point, I don't see any more questions that have come in, and I just checked Facebook and there are no more questions there, so we can give everyone an opportunity maybe to raise their hand if they'd like out there, and if folks want to, well, now one has come in, okay. Okay, we're gonna answer that one offline because I think we answered it already. So right now, I don't see any other questions. So if you do have a question, raise your hand or just go ahead and type it in. I do want to say we had a little bit of a technical difficulty at the beginning of the webinar on Facebook. We had it streaming on another account. I won't even go into how that happened. But anyway, it has been recorded. It is on Facebook. So those of you who may have missed the first 5 or 6 minutes, we will have that on our YouTube channel. I'll be uploading that as soon as this. Okay.
Jeff?
Yes.
I wanted to share with the group some information that I received attending a meeting with the county health department. And that was, they're tracking the COVID cases and the clusters, what sector has the most number of cases. And the top 4, the first one was the congregate care facilities and in group homes. The second category was unknown. Really, people did not know how they got the virus. The third category was dining in restaurants. And the fourth category was social gatherings, meaning family gatherings, parties, and the such. And the reason I point that out is we're coming into the holiday week, and I just want people to be safe and healthy. Please go to the county website, read about what you can and cannot do during the purple tier, and please follow them, because the more we follow the regulations, the greater the chances that we get out of this tier to a less restrictive tier. And it's just my pitch, and I just want everyone to be safe and healthy. So please take the time to go in and look at the regulations.
And I'll remind folks that if you do go to our webpage, lovelafayette.org, we put out a weekly newsletter called the Weekly Roundup, and it's sitting right there on the front page. And last Friday's edition was devoted to many of the topics that we're discussing today. So it's a good summary of everything, and it has links to things. It has both the county, the state, and the CDC, the federal guidance on Thanksgiving. Well, I was going to say Thanksgiving travel, but let's not even use that term, on what you probably want to be doing for Thanksgiving. So with that, let me see, we may have another one here. Okay, we do have one question, and the question is, are there any testing facilities in Lafayette?
I can answer that. There are not any testing facilities in Lafayette, but there is one in Walnut Creek. You can go again to coronavirus.cchealth.org, click on Get Tested, and you can just click on the testing location and you can sign up for a test. We have been getting the results in 1 to 2 days. I didn't look to see today where we are, but we have been getting pretty quick turnaround. Our county health department did last week pivot away from giving free flu vaccines at the testing centers that they had been doing for the past couple weeks, so that we can focus on testing. So again, coronavirus.cchealth.org, get tested. And it's really quite simple to do. There's walk-up test centers, there's drive-through test centers. It's very efficient and very quick to do. So please get tested, and you do not need to have symptoms to be tested. And either your health insurance will pay for it, or if not, it will be free and the county will pay.
And someone just wrote in to remind us there are private medical facilities that do tests as well, but we'll leave that to folks to figure out which they prefer to go to.
Okay, and if I could add one thing back on the very confusing, how many sides of the tent can be open? I've been texting with the PIO, the Public Information Officer for County Health, showed her the document I was reading from. She just texted me and said that letter's not correct. We will issue a correction ASAP. You can have one side closed of your tent. So that's official from County Health. Again, sorry for the confusion on that, but it's all moving very quickly. So we will get you the correct answers though. If you have other questions, please go ahead and either call Supervisor Anderson's office or the city, and we will all work together to get you the answers.
Mayor,
Okay.
do we have a word? Do we have any questions, Jeff?
We do have a hand raised, so we're not going to do video on this just to save time. So I'm just going to go ahead and allow Rolla to go ahead and ask the question. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. Great meeting. A lot of great information. Going back to the tents, I think it's really important. As I've worked at plenty of units, working with both health and fire, I think the confusion is when you're talking to the fire department regarding heaters, they're only requiring 2 tents to be down. But I think it's really, really important for fire and health department to communicate and make sure that the right message is being communicated. And this is what I've found, that fire is saying 2 tents can be down, but it's always been one side of the tent being down through Contra Costa County Health. It's never said 2 walls. Basically, the one side down is acting as a wall, but that's it. But all the other sides must be up, regardless of fire or what have you. According to Health Department for restaurant industry, it's only one side of the tent that can be down. We're seeing all sorts of mismanaged on that issue between both Walnut Creek and Lafayette. I've got restaurants in both towns, and it's very confusing, but it's also confusing when you're having to go back and get fire permission and then also, health. But as restaurants, we need to go with the Contra Costa Health for that information, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll add to that. I apologize if there's any confusion. You just got to keep in mind that there's multiple different regulations that you're working with here. So when we're giving an interpretation, we're only referring to the fire code, and that regulation, or that's how we identify those exceptions to permitting a tent and allowing a heater under there, is just specific to the fire code. And over the next 180 days or potentially a year that we're dealing with these permitting of tents, we may be in various stages of what tier we're in and what regulations the health department is putting out. But we will be consistent with the fire code requirements. So if there's more restrictive requirements out there that the health officials are identifying, then of course you have to adhere to those. Where we're identifying that, our regulations to the fire code are going to be consistent throughout the 180 days or 365 days that you have that tent permit. But you still are going to need to go, if the reason you're applying for that tent permit is to comply with local health orders, you obviously need to still comply with whatever tier we're in and whatever that health order is. It's just, I know it may be confusing and you feel like we're not on the same page, but we're really talking about 2 different standards here, where we are only enforcing the fire code and identifying why we're allowing heaters under tents. And that open air is really just to make sure that it's allowing enough air to disperse any CO or any type of fumes that a heater may be putting off. It has nothing to do with what the current requirements are for open air to deal with COVID and provide a safe open space for the virus. So Sorry if that caused confusion, but you're always going to need to go with the most restrictive requirements of the two. And if there's some confusion there, it's because we're dealing with two different regulations.
If I may, Chief Bachman just mentioned that it might be helpful when you do have a fire assessment or fire risk assessment for a permit to actually inform the applicant or the restaurant that there is another regulation. You don't even have to know what it is, but maybe just tell them. I think what we're hearing from our question is that concern people have with our government being too bureaucratic, too siloed, and not understanding the actual issue that people are addressing. And it's not to be critical, it's only to say that one of the things we need to do is make that little extra effort to make sure they understand that yes, we are following one particular regulation, but there's another one they need to make sure they check in on. Not to be critical, just to say this is something personally I've dealt with, and I'm hoping we can defeat that by being a little more clear to our public about what they need to do to get things done properly. It's important.
I do just want to note before Jay responds, we have about 2 minutes left, so probably we can do our closing statement shortly. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so before I make just a couple of comments, I wanted to ask just a few questions to clear up a couple of the conversations today. So, Mr. Bachman, tents, if a restaurant's going to put up a tent that's less than 400 square feet, do they need a permit?
No, they do not, as long as they're not putting any type of heating underneath it. And even if they're going to put heat underneath it, they still don't need a permit, but we're identifying that they do need to contact us and make us aware that they're doing that, because there's still miscellaneous site inspections that we may come out and do just to follow up to make sure that what's the spacing of that heating device that they're putting under that small tent, where's it at? And then we may do a site inspection just to make sure that they're not placing that tent that's less than 400 square feet or 700 square feet anywhere near where they're obstructing egress, because they still need to comply with all the site and egress requirements in the fire code, that we have access to the building and that the patrons have the ability to egress out of the building when we're in those tiers that it can be occupied.
Is the fire department making any recommendations of the difference between a heater or a lamp versus a heat blower?
No, we're not. We're just saying that it must be, listed for outdoor use in a damp location. So if it's an electrical heater, you need to make sure that it's not just for indoor use only, and that if it's an outdoor LP gas heater, that we're making sure we maintain the clearances to combustibles.
Thank you. Nirup, a question for you on a couple of questions were asked about is the city or county going to be offering any funds to businesses? So in a number of cities in the Bay Area, some of the funds that have been given back to the cities through the CARES Act have been given to businesses to keep them open. Is there any plans for that in Lafayette?
Jay, not with the round of funding that we received a couple of months ago, that the funds were used for, as the mayor said, for the business assistance program, to purchase water barriers, to block parking spaces. We had to COVID-proof the various city locations, and also the monies have already been budgeted for cities' operations.
Okay.
We were very hopeful that the next round of funding would come, and we're still hopeful that it'll come in January or February, and that would be the time for the council to have a discussion on how it spends that money.
Okay. And the last question is for Gail. We talked about the different tiers that are, part of the blueprint for a safe economy, but there is a more restrictive level than purple, isn't there? I mean, it is possible that we could, if things stay on this track, that we could actually not be able to even do outdoor dining. Isn't that correct?
You never know what the governor is going to do, and that's the crystal ball that I was talking about at the beginning. That we just don't have. The blueprint system, purple is the most restrictive, and but the goalposts have been moved, as a lot of people like to say, and it's emerging information. And that's the key. And we will have to see what the governor or the State Department of Health decides.
Okay, so I'll wrap up, Jeff, quickly. Number one, as Gail said earlier, right now the state is sort of dictating the direction in which we're going to evaluate and go. So it's then the county's responsibility to get that information to us so that we're consistent with that. So this is what I'm going to say, and if people don't get it that you need to have social distancing and wear a mask yet, we're in big trouble. So please, for the restaurateurs that are online and some of the small businesses, you can have 25% indoors right now. That's it. You really have to monitor that. The wearing of the mask, you have to ensure that your employees are doing that, and make sure that your guests are doing that as well. There is if you want to talk to somebody live at the health department, there's a COVID hotline. The number is 844-729-8410. I talk to them every day. They're great. You can get answers from them, or you can give one of us a call. There's also that's wrapped up in the next act by Congress. There is a $120 billion restaurant act that is sitting dormant, waiting for Congress to pass something. This bill will provide $120 billion to small businesses, small restaurants, not chains. This could be very impactful. Please write letters to write to your senators and tell them that this is important stuff, that we need to make a change. And the last thing I'll say is that starting on December 2nd, we'll continue with our question and answers on COVID at 9 o'clock, a Zoom meeting. You can find all that information on the Chamber website. And thanks everybody for participating in this.
Thank you. Mayor, any final words?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank Jay for all those thoughts. I think those are really critical to the overall conversation. Thank all the panel for being here. This has really been, I think, useful. But wear a mask. And I think wear a mask, even if you're just out on a walk. It really isn't painful or anything. It's okay. And it does a lot to help resolve this quicker if we all just follow that little bit of guidance.
I think there might be an additional question or so, but we don't have time. But what I've done is I put my email address up there, jhayman@ci.lafayette.ca.us. Go ahead and you can send me any additional questions you have. We'll make sure they get in the right hands and we'll get you some answers. So with that, anything else before we sign off?
I thank you, Meredith Mead with the Lafayette School District Board. You sent us the response to how does this affect the schools. You can go to the Lafayette School District website and there's a message from Superintendent Richard Whitmore. And Matt, I'd be happy to send you the email from Meredith.
Excellent. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. And thank you to all the people out there who participated both on Facebook and here on Zoom. We really appreciate it. A lot of great information. And again, this was recorded and will be on the city's YouTube channel later this afternoon. So thank you. With that, we'll say goodbye and take care, everybody. Have a good Thanksgiving and please be safe.
Thanks, everybody. Great holiday.